towards our model. When we went for the competition for the Northwest development, Caesar came up with this concept of the twin towers. Now, the requirement by Caesar was for 4.25 million square feet of built-up space. Caesar sort of interpreted this 4.25 million square feet into conveniently 88 stories. Now, 88, according to the Chinese geometry or feng shui that we call it here, is double prosperity. So he capped on that, and he capped this off at level 88. Both towers are twin in nature, both are at level 88. The highest occupiable floor is level 86 in these levels here. Okay. Now, when the design development was in progress, we had a space planning committee. KLCC had a space planning committee, and we went out to Petronas' offices. They were at that point of time occupying 7 different buildings in the city center, and we found that we could fit all of Petronas in one tower. It was then an executive decision to rent out Tower 2, and today Tower 2 is 70% leased out. We are very selective with our tenants because we want a corporate image for this building as well. The top 10 floors of this tower have been reserved by Petronas for future expansion, but on a recent decision, it was also decided to mark it out for a very high level of corporate offices. We have retained the top level 85 and 86, which is above us. We are level 83 right now, for a boardroom facility. In case there's an office from even overseas who wants to have their board meeting, they can come and have their meetings at the highest levels of the in the world rather. Now, the concept of the design. Now, Petronas have got a certain policy about in their office. When a visitor goes to meet any officer in Petronas, you cannot go to their office. You'll have to meet them in the meeting room levels, or the conference levels we call them. Now, so the design brief required the architect to come up with conference levels in whichever form that they were coming up with. Caesar decided to propose the conference levels midway up the tower, so for convenient use of the upper half and the lower half of the tower. And when he designed that, and after designing the towers for Caesar, the space that he had created in between the towers was more significant to him than the towers themselves. So he needed to do something with this space. And when he had designed the conference levels midway, he felt that should an officer in this tower have to be booked into a meeting room in this tower, he would have to come all the way down, cut across, and come up. So he said, no, that will not be good, and he decided to link the conference centers up. And that's how the Sky Bridge came into place. It was just, the Sky Bridge was purely a link to the conference centers. And it was not meant, like many, there's been an allusion to think that the Sky Bridge are holding the towers together. The towers have been designed to move and sway, but it does not hold. They actually rest on very large bearings on the bridge. The bridge itself rests on bearings in the tower's ends. Okay. After this briefing, I'm going to show you 3 video clippings. Because you are a delegation from the construction industry, we are showing you a very different tape. It's not the usual one that we show to all visitors, which is very comprehensive. This is quite detailed on the construction. Here is from the chill water that's generated in this plant, and in lieu of that, none of the projects on this development need to have their own chillers or their own cooling towers. The roof levels are clean. There's a lot of space that's been saved by having these plants here. We also found that it was economically viable for us to run the chillers 24 hours. So in lieu of that, we have air conditioning 24 hours in these buildings. And then we have temperature sensors. These are temperature sensors up here. They've got them in all the various zones. We've got 8 zones per floor. And these temperature sensors detect the heat, the body heat in the floor, and adjust accordingly through the building control systems. These are some of the intelligent systems that we have incorporated here. Any questions so far? Just a few more facts about the towers. Besides the towers being 88 stories high, it's 452 meters to the top of the spire bond. Okay? The pinnacle by itself, which is from this level up to the spire, is 73.5 meters. And that's what gave us the total height to the building and made it the tallest buildings in the world. The pinnacle is part of the structure. If you bring this pinnacle down to the ground floor, it's equivalent to a 20-story building. Okay? Now, that's why when we eject the pinnacles, we reject the spires out from the center up and capped it off. It was the Council of Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat in America who declared that the towers are the tallest in the world, and Sears in Chicago were really upset by it, and they took the council to court, and then the council redefined what was being the tallest, and today the Twin Towers are the tallest to the structural top, while the highest occupiable space is the CS Towers, which is at 103 floors. We are only 86. All right. Any questions so far?
What is floor height here?
The floor-to-floor height is 4 meters. It's slightly more than the usual, but that was simply because of the, these are the perimeter columns, and we have haunch beams. And to the lower end of the haunch beam, we needed that height. And so at the upper end, we needed that extra few millimeters to get the floor-to-floor height. The inner sides of the towers are illuminated, while the outer sides are in silhouette. It's in darkness. So if you happen to be on the east-west orientation of the tower, you only see one tower and you see it in silhouette. It creates interest in the buildings. That's the view of the park. That's part of the symphonic fountains that I talked to you about a little earlier. And in between the towers, now the original concept when we went for the master plan design competition, we had various proposals. Some of the proposals suggested that in the park we shall have water features, water bodies, like a water theme park kind of a thing, whereby the water would then flow straight down into the shopping arcade area. The whole place was water theme park everywhere, and it was water moving into the buildings and coming out of the buildings and things like that. So Caesar's original proposal required him to accommodate this proposal, and he had a water court in the center, where the main lobbies, you walk through the main lobbies just now, all that was part of the water court. And from there, people would have been able to take a water taxi and go out into the park and then come back into the shopping areas and things like that. Now, this whole concept was killed because as we did the value engineering, we found it was going to be too expensive for us to maintain it. And there's no natural resource of water here in the city center. So we redeveloped the whole thing. We reduced the size of the water bodies, and we changed the water court. We took off the water court, and in place of that, we've got the concert hall. It's a very small concert hall. It's 865-seater Philharmonic concert hall, but it's the first of its kind in Kuala Lumpur, in Malaysia, basically. This form here, you'll find these huge columns which look like tree trunks, large tree trunks, which go up and open up into branches. And from the skylight, we have two arms poking out in a crescent shape. Now, those were little contributions towards the Islamic characterization, a crescent-shaped mall. Even the towers were designed on a simple geometric form of a square, and then he rotated the square, and so it formed the basic Islamic geometric form. And today, that Islamic geometric form is the most beautiful geometry that you'd find in the world as such. So these are all little Islamic characters that he incorporated into the design. Okay.